process. Thank you. So Yasmin will be presenting us her paper on deinstitutionalization in Egypt, a case for contextualized alternative care reform through evidence-based approach. I'd like to remind the presenters, each one will have about 15 minutes and we'll be stopping you. And then followed by 5 to 7 minutes for discussion and questions. Yasmin.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd rather to stand up when presenting rather than sitting down. Okay, let me first introduce you. My name is Yasmin El-Hagri. I'm the Executive Director of Sanad for Alternative Parental Care. Shukran. And I'd like to share with you two disclaimers before I start. Can we close the door? Because it's a little bit distracting. Thank you. Okay. First one, I'm sure that not all of us are coming from the alternative care sector. It's okay. This case is only to inspire and help us that we could adopt the concept in different sectors. This is the first thing. It's okay if you're not coming from the alternative care sector. The second disclaimer, I'm not going to go through all the slides due to time constraint. So what I'm really keen on is to give you the concept and the essence of the case study. Okay. First of all, what's deinstitutionalization in the alternative care sector? Alternative care sector is for all kind of care for children and youth without parental care. Okay. It's the transitioning of institutional-based care like orphanages, shelters, for example, to family-based care like kafala, adoption, etc. For children and youth without parental care. Simply, these mechanisms are falling under deinstitutionalization, reducing the separation of children from their families from the beginning, reintegration of children into their biological families, because 80% of children in institutional homes worldwide are actually having known parents, 80%. Promote alternative families like kafala in the Islamic countries, and in other countries, non-Islamic countries, it's like adoption. Finally, reduce large-scale social care institution. What's large-scale institution? They look like this. Big, with many, we call it anabir, with many beds, routine, and they have usually minimum of 50 up to 200 and sometimes 300 children. This is what we call it big or institutional homes. So when the UN, in 2019, the resolution of the UN of Child Rights announced that all institutional homes should be transformed into family-based care and should be shut down, reduced, they meant big institutional homes. In Egypt, in our regulation, we call orphanages, regardless of the size and the number of children within these orphanages, institutional homes, مؤسسات إيوائية, regardless of the number. Why I'm saying this, I'll tell you later why I'm saying this information. So here, why deinstitutionalization? First of all, it's very harmful for the development of children. Second, as I said, 80% of the children in institutional homes, they have actually parents, known parents. Finally, the cost of raising children in residential care is higher than raising a child in a family for the government. The conflict caused by deinstitutionalization worldwide, likewise in Egypt, is due to lack of contextualization and lack of effective communication, because this is a huge change. When you come and tell people, like in Egypt, for example, where we are very familiar with orphanages, and it's like very much related to religion, sawab and connotation, it's very difficult when you come and say, we are going to shut all orphanages in Egypt, okay? So It made a huge conflict with policymakers, donors, beneficiaries, and practitioners due to misinterpretation of the term of deinstitutionalization that's equal to shutting down orphanages. For example, donors stopped. Grant organizations are stopping giving to any institutional homes, regardless of its size, big or small, due to the deinstitutionalization movement. Okay. In 2021, the Ministry of Social Solidarity launched a national strategy for the alternative care, and it was going towards the deinstitutionalization. Now, the risk associated with the deinstitutionalization are, in Egypt, challenges related to protection, because now, if I'm a child who has 12 years old, and you are going to separate me or place me in another small home or a family, how could this be? You are going to split me from my peers who I used to live with them for 12 years. Trauma. Another, child protection. We don't have sufficient human resources to monitor this number of small homes and families. Financial resources. Do we have the financial resources for this transformation? And finally, data availability and accessibility. And this is where I want to focus on. We proposed as Sanad for the Ministry of Social Solidarity a roadmap that fits our culture and our identity and our current needs and aspirations as well. And these are the principles of the deinstitutionalization roadmap. How much time left? Okay. International and regional best practice. We don't need to reinvent the wheel and do the same mistakes. Research and data analysis of orphanages in Egypt. That wasn't in the narrative of the UN or the UN bodies when they came and say, you know what, you need to shut orphanages. No, we don't need to shut orphanages. We need first to understand what's our context. Change management theories, stakeholder participation, even the beneficiaries, the orphans themselves, they needed to participate in this reform. Sanad hands-on experience. We had over than 16 years experience in the alternative care sector in Egypt with the government. The deinstitutionalization key roadmap was basically raising awareness and building shared vision with all stakeholders, developing standards and regulations for the new forms of alternative care, assessing and classifying existing orphanages to understand how do they operate, what's the quality provided from these orphanages or by these orphanages, developing individual transition plan. Each orphanage should be treated as a separate case. We cannot just generalize because there are some souls and people, human beings living in these orphanages. Implementing and evaluation, the implementation evaluation phase. Okay, introducing, now, after we did the roadmap and everything was perfect, we were surprised that there was a ministerial decree with a new form of alternative care called small homes. Small homes are small group homes. They have maximum of 10 children. And I'm very happy that Minna is here. Actually, she used to be in Yalla Kafala and she was with me actually in this surprising and drama. The ministerial decree wasn't clear about any regulation or standards of these kind of homes. It wasn't relevant to the context, the current context. So what we did is we proposed Yalla Kafala, Sanad, and Save the Children. Sanad initiated, and then we invited Save the Children and Yalla Kafala to do an exploratory research about the existing orphanages in Egypt, especially with the small number of children. Because it's not a matter of terminologies. If you're saying small homes, they are small orphanages. I can just change the terms, but let's see the demographics, psychographics, the quality of care provided in these homes. So the methodology of this study was actually part of it qualitative and quantitative. And we had a sample of 16 orphanages, small group homes also, because they started actually to license new small homes without understanding what's the standards and what's going to happen to other orphanages. So surprisingly, we found out the following: 50% of orphanages in Egypt, they have less than 20 children. So actually in Egypt, we have small homes, not big institutions. No substantial distinction in the quality of care provided between homes that have 10 or 20 or 30. More or less, they are the same. The other surprise, the majority of the children within orphanages in Egypt are actually between 12 and 18 years. So this is not the time to split them. This is not the time for, maybe it's good for kafala for the younger ones, but the younger ones are here. The one for kafala. These are the older ones who actually need aftercare. They need to be qualified to leave the orphanages and be independent, rather than splitting them. And this is what they said. I'm living with 60 girls in my home. This is one of the orphans. And right now, I don't need to live in a small home. I need to be qualified and ready to leave the orphanage I used to live in. This is one of the girls. The key finding, في inconsistency in policy and procedures, lack of clear vision. People didn't, even the officials in the Ministry of Social Solidarity who are executing the ministerial decree, didn't know what's the difference between small home and an orphanages with 10 or 20 children within them, the existing one. Lack of coordination, absence of clear standards, inadequate case management, and inconsistent child protection. This is when we scanned, or we not scanned actually, we assessed the quality standards within these small homes, existing ones and the new ones. The key results, we succeeded by this study to convince the Ministry of Social Solidarity to review again the ministerial decree and to detail the standards based on the existing orphanages in Egypt. We succeeded also that we consider Karen orphanages in Egypt with small number, even if they are above 10, up to 30, to leave them as is and to consider them as small group homes. Because the best interest of the child is to stay within their peers rather than splitting them. Also, we succeeded to create better understanding and alignment among different stakeholders. Now we started to contextualize the international and global concepts after the study. I'm going to wrap up. Sanad was requested by the Ministry of Social Solidarity to conduct further 2 studies, again, another 2 studies, because they started to believe in the power of research and knowledge and data. Alhamdulillah. So they actually asked us to find out the reason behind returning children by the kafala families to the Ministry of Social Solidarity, ارتداد الأطفال, and to do assessment across Egypt of the existing orphanages currently. This is, I think, the last slide. Yes, the last slide. The key lessons, civil society, they have a very crucial role to actually voice out and to advocate for contextualizing global agenda and global concepts. Partnership is crucial. Balancing between short-term and long-term is very important when it comes to reform, because the government, they need quick wins. Involving stakeholders, especially the children and the beneficiaries themselves, is not a luxury. Thank you so much. I hope I managed to stick to my time. Thank you. For any further details, I'm sure that AMEPPA are going to publish the paper presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yasmin, not only for the great presentation, but also for the great work you're doing at Sanad. So maybe I didn't present Yasmin properly. So Yasmin is the Executive Director of Sanad for Alternative Parental Care, an NGO that is doing incredible work for children. So I really applaud you for the great job you do. I open the discussion in case anyone has questions or comments to Yasmin. So you actually did great on time. So we do have some time for questions.
Thank you, Yasmin. قطعتي قلبي. So, yes, it's very interesting topic, very interesting topic. First of all, how many orphan institutions Egypt have? Okay, many, because I didn't see statistics, numbers. So how many institutions we have, how many orphans okay, in the institution, is it private or public sector? And finally, the orphan till when? You can see the last column for 18 and above. 18 above is an adult now, he's not a child. So what about their education level? And if I'm going to provide him an alternative parents, what's the criteria of selection? Because each category of this age, it must fit with another criteria for the alternative, not just because you mentioned that you have already alternative for 80% for them. This is a huge number, but how can you select them? How can you classify the 80%? Okay, and thank you.
Thank you for presenting such a very interesting study. I'm not from parental care background, but it's one of the topics that I'm really interested in. And how you present it's amazing, and how the role of civil society actually can put input and advocate for such an important aspect. But I want to ask, like, how would you overcome the challenge of financial resources in terms of if you're thinking of improving the quality of the actual orphanages in Egypt? So how will you overcome the financial factor and the human resource factor? So, and thank you.
So that's what happens when the presenter is so passionate about the topic. So over to you, Yasmin.
I'll give you the formal statistics and I'll give you the practitioner statistics. The formal statistics, according to the Ministry of Social Solidarity, we have less than 450 orphanages or institutional homes across Egypt. And as per the Ministry of Social Solidarity, we have around 9,000, not per orphanage, across Egypt. And another 12,000 within kafala families. Okay? So all in all, we are talking about 21, and we are 120 million person in Egypt, our population. Practitioners, according to practitioners, we believe that it's not less than 2 to 3 million. This is practitioners. And when I say practitioners, it's not only Sanad. This challenge is worldwide. It's not only related to Egypt. In this sector particularly, there is an issue in having accurate data about children and youth without parental care. Because also, children who are refugees and they come without their parents, they are considered children and youth without parental care, okay? But here, this is the two data I have. The second thing, according to law, child law, male, they leave the orphanage by the age 18 if they are not enrolled in higher education. We worked in 2021 with the Ministry of Social Solidarity and UNICEF and the civil society and the youth themselves, the care leavers, to develop a draft of a law for alternative care, requesting and advocating for something called aftercare. Aftercare is a transitional phase from 18 to 24. It should be institutionalized, where the orphanage continue supervising the youth, and they are like in a semi-independent phase. Education, it depends on the interest and the financial resources and the vision of the owner, because not most, 100% of orphanages in Egypt, جمعيات أهلية, not الوزارة. They are registered under the Ministry of Social Solidarity, but جمعيات أهلية. So if the owner think that they deserve, not that it's their right, to invest in their education, they will invest. If the owner believes that females must get married, خلاص, no education. For females, she may stay till she'll get married. And usually she is forced for arranged marriage because she's not empowered, and then she goes out, and then she comes back divorced with 3-5 children, and they are returned to the institution. I'll get back to you because I know you have lots of questions. Families, they have criteria, but the 80%, I want to make sure they are not foster family or alternative care family, not kafala family. They are their biological families, 80% biological. The reasons behind leaving the children is mainly poverty. And poverty leads to domestic violence, and poverty leads to unregistered marriage, and poverty leads to other reasons. صح؟ طيب. I'll get back to in the break بقى عشان حرام. I took a lot. Your question was about financial resources. We are trying to advocate to the private sector, to the donor. We even were actually organizing a conference. All of you are welcome to attend end of January about the SDGs and the influence of the SDGs and its role to serve alternative care. What we are working with, on the advocacy efforts to actually educate the grantors, people who give grants, or private sector, or individual donors, because there is a lot of a big budget chunk from Zakat al-Mal is going to orphans, but not well directed. Another thing we are working on it, and we hope a university like the AUC and other universities to work with us, is to start to rebrand the social work job or profession, and to take fresh graduate to train them, qualify them, and help them to find jobs in qualified and good orphanages or NGOs working in the sector. I know I'll be here after the session if you need any other.
Yes, and we're here tomorrow as well. Thank you so much, Yasmin. Very, very interesting. Okay, so we move directly to our second presenter, Nurhan Zahran, will be talking to us about Education 2.0. And I know Dr. Tariq Shawi, who is here at the university, would be very, very interested. So we'll definitely share your paper with him, maybe after the conference. Please, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nurhan Zahran. I'm an educational consultant, and I've been honored to work on this research piece. So let's just dive into it. Mainly, this is derived from my thesis. My work was focusing on Education 2.0 reform, which was launched by Dr. Tariq Shawi in 2018. And I was focusing on Suheg. And I will tell you why I chose Suheg in the way. So mainly to like set the ground, we have a couple of facts that I want to share with you. The first one is that almost 90% of the education of the students in Egypt, they seek public education system, which is a huge number. The second thing is that Egypt ranks one of the lowest countries in terms of education quality. There are other evidence to support this claim by the World Economic Forum. Actually, the Egyptian students do not match their peers in other countries in the same grades regarding the knowledge level. We can see that in global tests like PEARLS and TIMSS, Egyptian students do not even match the lowest average scores for these global tests. So this shows how the Egyptian education system is inefficient and is not preparing the students to match the global standards. Of course, we have challenges here in Egypt, like how the teachers are not qualified, the declining quality of education, the rigid curriculum, the resource scarcity, the high class density, and this is a very important one. There is also the high dropout rates, and finally, how there is a high student to teacher ratio in Egypt. And for instance, let me say that the literature says there are 40 students per class in the public education system. However, when I went to Suheg, there were 70 and more in one classroom, and this is the primary stage. Egypt has been, actually the government has recognized that there is an issue with the quality of education, and they started working on different reforms since the 1990s. As we can see now, it seems that it's not efficient. However, in 2018, Dr. Tariq Shawqi, as I said, he launched the Education 2.0 reform, and the plan was starting 2018 until 2030. It's going from like the lowest stage. It started from the kindergarten stages, and each year more stages are being included. So this year it's primary six, grade six are the ones who are getting the reform implemented. And then next year, the first preparatory stage is getting enrolled. The strategic goals that Education 2.0 had, guys, why are you so sad? Come on, there are still things that you should be sad about. The faces are very sad. We're still in the beginning. This is the introduction. So the strategic goals were mainly about supporting the infrastructures of the public school system, about integrating technology, training the teachers and the school leaders, and finally getting computer-based assessments to the schools. However, not all of these things were implemented. The plan was like taking it step by step. And by the way, the reform itself and the curriculum, if you got to see the books, they are amazing. The ministry got National Geographic to do the geography books, for instance, Oxford to do the English books. So the books, they look like encyclopedia books that I used to look for in my library when I was at the primary stage. So they look amazing, the curriculum is amazing, but we're here today to talk about how it was implemented, especially in one of the poorest governorates in Egypt. So let's have like a quick comparison to see how the old system is different from Education 2.0 reform. The old system was mainly focused on memorization. The new one is trying to embed critical thinking, project-based learning, and experiential learning so that the kids do everything hands-on. The old system was focusing on traditional pedagogies. The new one is focusing on, as I said, project-based learning and recent educational pedagogies. It was focusing on each subject at a time. So the Arabic teacher never talked to the English one. They never talked to the geography teacher. However, in the new system, in 2.0, they talk together. They do projects together. It's multidisciplinary. Lastly, there was no technology in the old system. The new system is tech enabled, so that's a very good thing. So now let's say why Sohag. Sohag is the second poorest governorate in Egypt. According to CAPMAS, the poverty rate is 59.6%. The first one is Asyut, if you're wondering. There is a very high student-to-teacher ratio inside the classes. I just mentioned that it's almost 70 plus inside the classrooms. And finally, the government expenditure in general is very low in Egypt. However, in Sohag, it was lower. So my research question and my research sub-questions were mostly around how to assess the implementation of this reform in Sohag. I was thinking about getting the perception of the parents and the teachers there. The teachers, because they were the ones who were implementing the reform inside the classrooms and getting the students buy-in. And the parents, because they are the one who are supporting their children, and they are a very huge, important pillar in the cycle. This is the conceptual framework. I'll just walk you through very quickly. Here is the education reform. And this is my supervisor, Dr. Rayal Barada, used to call it the black box because it included all the different components that affected the reform. And on the other side, we can see how the stakeholders perceived the reform. And my hypothesis was if they perceive it as positive, this means that it's working, it's effective somehow in their perspective. And if it's negative, this means it's not working. Those are my main literature review themes. I'm almost done. Okay, so the research gap that I've seen when I went through the literature, there were no not several papers talking about the reform, not several papers talking about the assessment, and no one is seeing how the teachers and the parents responded to it. They were only focusing on which parts of the policy was implemented and which parts were not implemented. And there wasn't many papers talking about it in especially underprivileged areas. So mainly I went to Suheg. I had 29 interviews. There were 3 stakeholder groups. The first one are the teachers from private and public schools, but the private schools, they implemented the new curriculum. Parents also was the second group, and the last group was educational experts who were actually on the table with Dr. Tariq Shawqi when he was planning for the reform. This is like a breakdown of the stakeholders. Okay, this is the thing. You need to get sad here. Okay, so the first thing is the literature says that our constitution, our Dustur says that the government should be spending 4% of the GDP on education in Egypt. In 2020, we spent 2.5% only. Actually, when I went to talk to the teachers in Sohag, they were so happy with the curriculum. They weren't supportive, but they were so happy that they were not teaching the students the traditional ways. One of the teachers, she was a math teacher, she said, I'm happy that now when I teach the children about the multiplication table and I'm telling them not 2 times 2 equals 4. No, I tell her jump twice for 2 times. So now she gets that it's equal 4. So that's good. They're like experimenting. They're practicing the knowledge. That's a very good thing. Of course, the teachers, they were not supportive because they need help. The professional development that they got was not enough. It was theoretical. It didn't prepare them for what to do inside the classrooms. How to implement the curriculum, how to implement the activities. They are very good activities. They are QR codes in the books. They don't have smartphones to use the QR codes. They don't have data show devices to show the children the videos. The parents were dissatisfied as well. They did not understand what's about the reform. They don't get what's happening. Dr. Tariq used to do those conferences, and he was very active on social media and trying to get their buy-in this way, talking to them and talking to them. However, he was not talking their language. He did not understand what's happening. They don't get what the reform is about. They were very frustrated because their children came back home asking them to help them with a math equation or something, and they could not help them. They don't understand what's in the books. They thought their kids are not getting any education anymore. So they were very frustrated. Of course, the ministry had plans. I asked Dr. Tariq himself, I asked him, what about the monitoring and evaluation? How did you do this? How did you plan for it? He had plans. Unfortunately, he didn't have the time to do all the plans, of course, as we know. However, they had many challenges, like the parents' resistance, like the robust parallel economy of the private tutoring, like the overcrowded classrooms, which are not really that easy to solve. And the current minister is actually doing some stuff that I hope it's working to solve the case. Their plan was to get the teachers buy-in during the PD sessions that they received. However, not all the teachers received the PD sessions. They were planning to get the parents buy-in through the Dr. Tariq Shawqi's interventions and conferences and social media posts. I'd like to focus on this slide because one of the parents told me explicitly that they felt their kids are not getting education and they were planning to move his kid to Azhari education. And the issue is, if he did not pass the test in Azhari education, which we all know is way harder than the regular one, he asked me, "What do you think I would do?" And he said, "Probably I will ask my child to stay at home." And that's a very shocking thing that I heard in the field. Okay, so moving forward, one of the most important things that I've seen in the field that was working in the private schools and was not in the public ones was the community of practice, or the PLC as they call it, which means that the teachers, they sit together from different subjects, they work together, they do it here in Cairo. I've seen it in private schools. It's very interesting how the teachers help each other. It would be very beneficial for this reform because everything is multidisciplinary. So if they sit together, it would be easier for the English teacher to understand the terms that are there coming from the science curriculum. The science teacher would be able to pronounce even the English words in the right way if she sit with the English teacher. So working together would be very helpful, and it would be very beneficial for all the teachers. So that was one of my most important policy recommendations. Teachers in I won't go through all of them, don't worry. Teachers teachers need support in how to implement the reform. They don't know how to do it. They are very nice and they're trying to do everything. And Egyptian teachers, I've worked with teachers from other countries. Here, they are very different. They have incredible passion. They have very poor, in Sohag, of course, very poor socioeconomic status. However, they take stuff from their home and take it to schools to help the children and do like charts and stuff for them so that they could understand the information in a better way. So imagine if we could give them resources, if we could give them professional development programs tailored for their needs, it would be incredible. Of course, there are stuff that are not that easy, like the decentralization of the schools, but I've seen in other countries when I went through the literature that decentralization helped a lot because each school, if we give it the authority to do its own tailored thing and to support their children in the way that the students need, it would be really helpful for them. They would tailor their own solutions. They just need the support. Very good. Okay, so one of the other things that is very important are the parents' endorsement. I do believe that this is a very important one because the parents are the driving engine behind the students at home. Yani, I'm a product of the public education system, by the way. I came here to AEC through a fellowship, and I'm proud of both the education systems I've been through because my mother was there all over the way. She was pushing me. And then when I got to like taste the good quality education here at AUC, I believe that my mother was part of it. So parents are very important. We need to get their buy-in, especially in the underprivileged areas. One of the things that the ministry had planned and did not have the time to do it was the M&E framework. They were planning to do M&E framework to measure the outputs of the reform and how it was implemented and everything, but there was not enough time and Dr. Tariq left. So, there was no one to push it forward anymore. Of course, there are other things like teachers' income diversification. Teachers, this is something that comes from everywhere around the globe. It's not just here in Egypt. Teachers are very, they are paid very low wage, and they need to get better salaries. And I've seen this when I went there on the field, and I was part of a team that delivered trainings to the teachers in poor areas. They were saying, we're happy with the training and everything, but we need meals. We need money. We need financial support. So they need this. And if we're going to fight the parallel economy of the private tutoring, we need to support them financially. So this is a very important thing to think about, how to diversify their income. I'm done. So thank you so much for listening. and I'm ready for any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Another question.
انت كده جبتينا ارض اورفن وبعدين يجي بصوا انتوا الاثنين جمال قوي احنا كده نروح. Okay. Nurhan, it's very good. Okay, the initiative is okay, but let me tell you something about if it's not Suhag, it would be felt in anywhere in Egypt. Because all the time the minister in his office, good initiatives, and all the people around them telling them that's fine, that's good. It's what is called good intention. But good intention, it doesn't pave the way all the time. The way to implementation is full of blocks and dams. So in Egypt, I think we are lacking of infrastructure. And I don't mean by infrastructure having a laptop or a network, infrastructure, social, mental, how you are creating the right environment. You can take a pilot, you can train the parents. If they cannot provide meals, if they are under poverty, as they are understanding the tablet and activities and so on, what about 70 students, children in the same room? They are violent. They don't think about activity. So if you'd like to implement any initiative, any government initiative, take a pilot, first of all, and think how you implement it effectively, not at the minister office, no, at the ground, at the fact, and see them. And then you train the teachers and you see the parents, all the factors. This is what I mean. We are lacking of comprehensive infrastructure. That's my comment. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Quick ones? Really quick.
Do you think in your research, did you actually tackle how the Ministry of Education itself was ready for this reform? Because the way how I see the ministry itself, sometimes we need a reform for the institution before doing any external reform. Did your paper tackle any of this?
Well, let me be honest with you. Of course, I didn't have access to the ministry. The educational experts who agreed to talk to me were out of the ministry. It was after Dr. Tariq left the office. So I couldn't really talk to people who were already there. However, those who I talked to, it was very clear that it was very visionary. It was out and it could not be done here in Egypt unless you have good research background, good research backbone, which Dr. Tariq, by the way, he was planning to do this. However, he said that. He said that he wanted to make sure that there is one child who got into the system in 2018 and got out in 2030 so that he could match the 2030 vision, which was a very good thing. However, practically, in a country like Egypt, I don't think it was a very good call. Well, if you go, there are other things that I didn't mention in the reform. It was part of the reform was the things that were done in secondary level and how the computerized assessments were done. But of course, you've all seen how Sanawiyya Amma was being perceived at that time and how it was a shock for everyone and chaotic as well. Do you know that during this year, Egypt was one of the very few countries who actually continued the academic year? We are one of the few countries who did this. But how did we continue the year? This is the question. Remember the students, the parents used to buy the research papers for for their children and things like that. Yes, so we're very clever in going around the system. So that's why the reform needed to be like, I don't want to use a bad word, but maybe more clever, more clever about dealing with the reform and dealing with the Egyptian mentality. The Egyptian mentality needs to be studied well before such a visionary reform planned and implemented in such a very short time. Yeah, we need a tailored one.
Sorry, I'll have to stop here, and maybe after the session, you'll have the chance to continue talking to Nurhan. Thank you so much, Nurhan, for your presentation. So we started about 25 minutes late because of the technical problem. but will take about 15 to 20 minutes after the scheduled time of the session, if that is okay for everyone. So now we move directly to the third presenter, Dr. Islam Abdelbari, who is an economist, but also an associate professor at the Arab Academy for Science and Technology and Maritime Transport.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Arana. I'm afraid we'll leave primary data and working on ground, and we'll leave Egypt, unfortunately, and we'll move to Gulf countries, GCC, to know what is the main driver for CO2 emission based on econometric study. Okay. So the research entitled Public Policy and Environmental Sustainability Strategies for GCC countries in addressing CO2 emission. So as we know, ممكن نشيل okay. Worldwide, the global energy consumption increased on average by 2% worldwide. So this is on average, and this is has many economic sequences. Like in 2050, 20% of global GDP will reduce due to climate change, and this percentage will reach to 5 to 10% for other vulnerable developing countries, and all of this will lead to undermine the development, the global and world development, and maybe will push more than 100 million into extreme poverty. Going to GCC countries, as we know, that is GCC countries is gifted research abundant countries. More than 30% of oil reserves and 20% of natural gas are located in the region. However, this is dependent on environmental dependent on natural resources, lead to environmental degradations, include air pollution, water scarcity, and climate change. And as we know that the average temperature for this region specifically is raised for 1.5 higher than the world average as 1%. And this will lead to decrease the GDP for GCC countries by 2050 to about 3%. As we can see here, the CO2 emission for Gulf countries and how around 75% of emissions coming from Saudi Arabia. Of course, Saudi Arabia is the largest economy and more depending on the oil. But again, it's a lot of emissions coming from Saudi Arabia and then from Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, and then Bahrain. The same result confirmed by simple regression, time regression based on country fixed effect. We can find that all countries, the energy consumption, CO2 emissions increased over the time, and Saudi Arabia is outlier from the other countries, followed by Emirates. Based on this situation, Gulf countries start to do a lot of initiative strategies, 2030 agenda and other program in order to reduce this emission and to work to control and to be more green. So the study is trying to examine the key driver of CO2 emission in 6 GCC countries from 1996 to 2022, such as energy consumption, economic growth, financial development, openness to trade, and governance, in promoting environmental sustainability to draw a roadmap for policymakers to achieve environmental sustainability in GCC countries. We start by the literature review as usual, and the literature review putting the basis for theoretical and empirical evidence for how these variables connected to each other, especially for energy consumption, economic growth, financial development, trade, and governance. The output, the empirical output, we found that is a lot of evidence worldwide. We have a lack of this evidence in this area. In addition, there is a contradicting between some of the results. That's why we need to do this kind of a study. The methodology The econometric methodology simply we start by test the cross-sectional dependence, whether there is a relations between those 6 countries or not, and then we start the stationary test, the stationarity, co-integration, and after that we determine the relation in long term and in short term based on several model, augmented mean group, common correlated effect mean group, and pooled mean group regression, specifically for each country specific. For the first testing of cross-sectional dependence, we found that we check the interdependence and spillovers between GCC countries. Most of variables significant, which means there is a dependence between those 6 countries, simply because they are depending on the oil structure, economy, and the policy and political system in those countries is common. So that's mean any economic and environmental shock in one country will likely affect the other countries directly. And that's lead to 2 interpretation. Econometrically, we need to deal with this issue, a common correlated effect mean group. And for policy perspective, there is evidence that cross-border spillovers suggest a climate mitigating initiative should putting together for the whole region's 6 countries. And then we start analyze a panel unit root test integrated in first difference, and then co-integration, the variable is co-integrated. Then let's move to the output for the main models. The first model, augmented mean group model, we found that economic consumption and economic growth is statistically positive. That means it's economic energy consumption and economic growth positively, significantly lead to increase the CO2 emission. And then after we controlled an unobserved common factor, in addition to energy consumption and economic growth, a financial development and the trade openness is also significant positive. However, control of corruption becomes significant and negative. That means controlling corruption, working as a proxy for the governance, could lead to decrease the emission. And then we try to determine this relation in short term to understand country-specific adjustment dynamic, to understand the differences in short-term dynamic across countries. So the result first, the first one is confirmed the long-term relation, and for the short-term relation to show the dynamics across the countries, there is a difference between these countries in the short term. For instance, Kuwait showed a fast adjustment speed toward a long-term equilibrium. However, Oman and Qatar had a much slower adjustment speed. That means the shock will be resisting longer in these countries. So these differences reflect variation in the policy effectiveness, energy structure, and governance quality among Gulf countries. So what does it mean? So the study highlights the need for GCC countries to adopt green growth strategies. Also, study shows that energy consumption and economic growth are the main driver for CO2 emission. The study also shows that financial development and institution quality can facilitate environmental sustainability. For the result on long term, we have to work on regional long-term strategies through improve energy efficiency, invest in renewable energy, enhance regional environmental cooperation. For the short-term relations, countries like Oman should accelerate responses. So Oman need to work much more harder to reduce CO2 emission through revise energy policies, pricing policies to encourage efficiency, support investment in the green industry. For the Qatar building resilience, have to work to adapt the environmental shocks through investment in sustainable public transportations and other kind of investment to promote public awareness in order to reduce individual carbon footprint. four countries, the most growing countries in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia and Emirates, should work to encourage more for innovations and technology and invest research in research and development and other physical reform in taxation policies as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Everybody's doing great on time today. Thank you so much, Dr. Islam. So any questions?
Just small questions, because Islam is my dearest friend, okay? So Islam, about governance, about the variable governance. You said it's positive with CO2? It's negative? You
Negative.
mentioned
So-
corruption. You took the average of the six...
No, we used
Separate?
government effectiveness, control of corruption, and regulated quality. The only one that's significant is control of corruption. Negative.
It's negative, but the other two,
It's not significant.
it's not significant.
Yes.
Okay, this is about governance.
No, if we promote control of corruption, this will lead to reduce CO2 emission. لا مش أي حاجة. It depends for the significance for the result. Generally, yes, it should be. Theoretically, yes. Yes, theoretically, yes. But we confirm empirical evidence.
So let me ask you more generally about the main differences you found across those countries. So I saw that in some countries like Kuwait, the effect is faster than in Qatar. And but what are the other important differences that you noticed based on the data that you're using? And which source of data? Maybe that's something I missed in your presentation. What data?
Celebration. That's celebration by
Okay.
my presentation. Thank you.
So
It's World Bank
that's-
data.
It's
Who-
the typical World Bank.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So do you have in mind the main differences across countries when it comes to the findings?
And findings is if we go to for specific countries, we can find mostly it's equal except for the returning returning to the equilibrium again. The fasting of returning back. Kuwait, for instance, is growing. It have a more resilient country. Rather, Oman and Bahrain need more effort to promote efficiency with CO2 emission. This is the main difference. Of course, if we return to the regression, we can find that most of the countries is working on the same area. That's why this confirms the result of cross-dependence tests, that most of the countries is connected to each other.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. So without further ado, please, Dr. Layla. Layla Al-Asri will be
شكرا.
presenting us her paper on employment public policy in the Maghreb,
Oui.
challenges and opportunities for socio-economic integration.
اوكي شكرا.
Dr. Layla, if you can present yourself to begin.
دكتورة ليلى العسري، أستاذة مؤهلة بكلية العلوم الاقتصادية القانونية والاقتصادية والاجتماعية بتطوان.
From
من المغرب.
Arabic to English, please.
D'accord. وبما أنني أتحدث اللغة الفرنسية je suis francisante donc je préfère ندير البريزونطاسيون ديالي باللغة العربية بالعربية بريزونطاسيون باللغة العربية أوكي. وسنتطرق في هذا الموضوع إن شاء الله لسياسة تشغيل الشباب في إطار رؤية المغرب 2030 والتي تهدف إلى تطوير مجموعة من القطاعات. الموضوع والإشكالية بالضبط سياسة التشغيل العمومي للشباب في المغرب، التحديات والآفاق من أجل الإدماج الاجتماعي والاقتصادي. دونك سأتطرق لهذا الموضوع بمقدمة أولية وبعد ذلك في 3 محاور. المحور الأول سياسة التشغيل العمومي للشباب في المغرب،
المحور الثاني التحديات الرئيسية التي نواجهها حاليا، والمحور الثالث الآفاق والحلول المقترحة لتجاوز هذه التحديات. أولا تعد بطالة الشباب من أهم التحديات التي واجهها المغرب في السنوات الأخيرة، وتفاقمت شدتها بفعل عوامل متعددة، أبرزها التأثير الاقتصادي لجائحة كوفيد-19 وما تبعها من ركود اقتصادي أثر بشكل مباشر على سوق العمل. وبالإضافة إلى ذلك تأثرت الظروف الاقتصادية بالتغيرات العالمية مثل التضخم وارتفاع أسعار الطاقة والمواد الأساسية كما هو الحال في مجموعة من الدول ومصر كذلك، مما يزيد من صعوبة توفير فرص العمل المستدامة للشباب. وتؤكد البيانات الأخيرة خطورة الأزمة، إذ تشير إحصائيات المجلس الأعلى للتخطيط إلى أن نسبة البطالة بين الشباب الذين تتراوح أعمارهم بين 15 و 24 عام في تزايد في السنوات ستتزايد في السنوات الأخيرة وقد تصل إلى 37%. كما تواجه هذه الفئة عدة مشاكل أخرى تتعلق بضعف المهارات المناسبة لسوق الشغل، تزايد الفوارق الجهوية في توزيع فرص العمل مما يؤدي إلى تفاقم أزمة البطالة وتكريس الضعف الاقتصادي والاجتماعي. ومن هذا تبدو هذه الإشكالية واضحة، وهذه القضية مهمة، إذ أن تشغيل الشباب ليس مجرد قضية اقتصادية بل ركيزة أساسية في تحقيق الاستقرار الاجتماعي والحد من التوترات التي يمكن أن ينشأ عنها الإقصاء الاقتصادي لهذه الفئة. كما يساعد دمج الشباب في سوق العمل في دعم الاقتصاد الوطني من خلال الاستثمار في الطاقة الشابة وتحفيز الإنتاجية والابتكار. ومن هذا المنطق يهدف هذا العرض إلى دراسة الوضع الحالي للسياسات العامة لتشغيل الشباب في المغرب وتسليط الضوء على أبرز التحديات التي تواجه فعالية تنفيذ هذه السياسات، مع استشراف الآفاق المستقبلية وتقديم التوصيات لتطوير هذه السياسات في ضوء المتغيرات الاقتصادية والاجتماعية الحديثة. في المحور الأول سنتطرق لسياسة التشغيل العمومي للشباب في المغرب. سياسات التشغيل العمومي للشباب في المغرب تلعب دورا محوريا في محاربة البطالة وتعزيز الإدماج الاقتصادي والاجتماعي لهذه الفئة. وتتجسد هذه السياسات في مجموعة من البرامج الاستراتيجية التي تهدف إلى تأهيل الشباب وتطوير مهاراتهم وتشجيعهم على ريادة الأعمال. سنقوم أولا بتعريف أهداف السياسات العمومية للتشغيل، إعطاء بعض الأمثلة عن البرامج الوطنية ودور المؤسسات العمومية في تطوير مهارات الشباب ودمجهم في سوق الشغل. تعني سياسات التشغيل العمومي مجموعة التدابير والبرامج التي تضعها الدولة بهدف إدماج الشباب في سوق العمل وتقليص معدلات البطالة، ومن بين أهدافها توفير فرص عمل مستدامة، وهذا ما نطمح له جميعا، تحسين قدرات الشباب من خلال التكوين والتأهيل. واليوم بالمغرب هناك مجموعة من تنزيل مجموعة من البرامج من أجل تحسين جودة التعليم، سواء التعليم الأساسي أو التعليم الجانبي، التعليم الجامعي، تعزيز المبادرة الذاتية من خلال إعطاء تمويلات للشباب الذين يحملون مشاريع مهمة ودعم المشاريع الصغيرة للشباب. دونك هذه السياسات تعتبر أداة فعالة لتحقيق التنمية الاجتماعية والاقتصادية والحد من التفاوتات. أمثلة عن البرامج الوطنية. في إطار هذه السياسات أطلقت الدولة المغربية مجموعة من البرامج الموجهة للشباب. أولا برنامج إدماج، والمعروف حاليا، يهدف إلى دعم الإدماج المهني للشباب من خلال عقود العمل وعقود وتدريبات داخل المقاولات، ما يسمح للشباب باكتساب الخبرة وتسهيل دخولهم لسوق الشغل. وحاليا في الجامعة نسعى دائما إلى إحداث اتفاقيات مع القطاع الخاص والفاعلين الاقتصاديين من أجل توفير تكوينات للطلبة وفرص الشغل دائمة. البرامج التأهيل ويركزوا على تعزيز قدرات الشباب من خلال برامج تكوينية متخصصة تتوافق مع حاجيات سوق العمل. يساهم هذا البرنامج في تقليص فجوة المهارات وتحقيق ملائمة بين التكوين والتشغيل، وهذا ما تقوم به مجموعة من المؤسسات حاليا، مثل المبادرة الوطنية للتنمية البشرية التي توفر تكوينات وتمويلات للشباب. برنامج مقاولاتي ويشجع دعم الشباب على ريادة الأعمال من خلال تقديم دعم مالي وتقني لإطلاق مقاولاتهم الصغيرة، ما يعزز روح المبادرة وخلق فرص العمل الذاتية. بالنسبة للمؤسسات العمومية فهي تقوم بدور مهم في مواكبة هذه السياسات، وأبرزها الوكالة الوطنية لإنعاش التشغيل والكفاءات، والتي تلعب دور الوسيط بين طالبي الشغل والمقاولات، بين الطالب خصوصا عندنا في طلبات الجامعة، ما بين طلبة الجامعة والمدارس والمقاولات. تقدم خدمات مثل التوجيه، التكوين، المواكبة في البحث عن فرص العمل. وهناك أيضا مكتب التكوين المهني وإنعاش الشغل الذي يساهم في تكوين الشباب من خلال برامج تأهيلية وتقنية تتماشى مع متطلبات سوق الشغل، ما يمكنهم من تحسين كفاءتهم وزيادة فرص إدماجهم المهني. مع ذلك فهناك مجموعة من التحديات على الرغم من هذه السياسات المنزلة على أرض الواقع. هناك مجموعة من التحديات الرئيسية أمام إدماج الشباب في السوق المغربي، ويمكن مناقشة هذه التحديات بالتفصيل على النحو التالي في 4 نقط. البطالة الهيكلية والظرفية، ضعف الملائمة بين التكوين الأكاديمي ومتطلبات سوق العمل، ضعف فعالية البرامج الحالية لتشغيل الشباب، وغياب التنسيق بين القطاعين العام والخاص. أولا البطالة الهيكلية والظرفية. البطالة الهيكلية وترتبط البطالة الهيكلية بتحولات عميقة في الاقتصاد المغربي، مثل ظهور قطاعات جديدة مثل قطاع التكنولوجيا، الصناعات الخضراء، واكتفاء أخرى تقليدية، مما يؤدي إلى فجوة بين المهارات المطلوبة والكفاءات المتوفرة لدى القوى العاملة. وينتج عن هذا النوع من البطالة عدم قدرة الشباب على التكيف مع متطلبات سوق العمل المتجددة، مما يزيد تعقيدا الإدماج المهني. بالنسبة لبطالة الظرف، تنشأ هذه البطالة نتيجة عن المتقلبات الاقتصادية، وهذا ما حصل في لا بيريود دو كوفيد 19، حيث تؤدي إلى فقدان الوظائف أو تراجع الاستثمارات في قطاعات معينة، كما حصل في جائحة كورونا. وتسبب هذه البطالة ارتفاعا مؤقتا في معدلات البطالة، لكنها تتحول في أحيان كثيرة إلى بطالة طويلة الأمد بسبب القدرة على امتصاص الصدمات. بالنسبة لضعف الملائمة بين التكوين الأكاديمي ومتطلبات سوق العمل، هناك الخلل بين العرض والطلب. 3 مينوت داكوغ. الخلل بين العرض والطلب، ضعف التكوين المهني والتقني، وغياب منظومة التوجيه المهني. بالنسبة لضعف فعالية البرامج الحالية لتشغيل الشباب، هناك عدم تحقيق الأهداف المرجوة، نسب إدماج ضعيفة، انعدام الاستدامة، وفيما يتعلق بغياب التنسيق بين القطاعين العام والخاص، هناك محدودية التنسيق المؤسسي، صعوبة استقطاب الكفاءات الشابة. الحلول، الآفاق والحلول. الإصلاحات سوف نتطرق بالنسبة للآفاق والحلول على 3 محاور: الإصلاحات الضرورية، تشجيع ريادة الأعمال، وتعزيز آليات المتابعة والتقييم. الإصلاحات الضرورية، أولا ملائمة التكوينات المهنية مع متطلبات التحول التكنولوجي وسوق العمل. يجب التركيز على تحديث البرامج التكوينية ومناهج الدراسة بحيث تواكب تحولات التكنولوجيا المتسارعة. ضرورة إدماج مجالات مثل الرقمنة، الذكاء الاصطناعي، علوم البيانات، تكنولوجيا المعلومات وفي التكوينات المهنية والجامعية، تعزيز التعليم التقني والمهني باعتباره رافدا أساسيا لتلبية حاجيات القطاعات الإنتاجية. تعزيز الشراكة بين القطاعين العام والخاص لخلق فرص الشغل مستدامة من خلال برامج تدريبية مهنية تسهل إدماج الشباب، تشجيع المقاولات الكبرى والمتوسطة على استقطاب متدربين شباب من خلال تحفيزات، إطلاق برامج مشتركة تهدف إلى استحداث مشاريع اقتصادية، وتهيئة مناخ ملائم للاستثمار لجذب مشاريع وطنية ودولية تعتمد على التشغيل الشبابي. وهذا ما تقوم به مجموعة من الدول في شمال إفريقيا، محاولة تهيئة مناخ ملائم لجلب الاستثمارات الخارجية. تشجيع دعم الابتكار والمقاولات الصغرى لتعزيز التشغيل الذاتي، تسهيل الولوج والتمويلات، تعزيز آلية المتابعة والتقييم، وضع مؤشرات لقياس فعالية السياسات والبرامج الموجهة للشباب، ضرورة تحديث مؤشرات كمية ونوعية دقيقة لقياس مدى نجاح البرامج الموجهة للشباب، إنشاء منظومة تقييم مستمرة تضمن تتبع النتائج، رصد البيانات وتحليلها بانتظام، تقديم تقارير دورية تعرض على الرأي العام وصناع القرار لتتبع تطور السياسات والموجهة خصوصا للشباب. وفي الخاتمة في خاتمة هذا الموضوع لابد من التأكيد على أنه نظرا لكون تشغيل الشباب أولوية وطنية تؤثر بشكل مباشر على التنمية الاقتصادية والاجتماعية، فإن التسريع من إنزال المحاور الاستراتيجية لسياسة التشغيل في المغرب أصبحت ضرورة لا غنى عنها. هذا لا يعني أن هذه السياسات غير موجودة، هي موجودة، ولكن يجب تسريع من إنزالها بشكل صحيح. أولا يدعو إلى إصلاح نظام التعليم والتدريب لجعله أكثر انسجاما مع احتياجات سوق العمل، ونحن في بداية تنزيل نظام تعليم جامعي جديد يوفر للطلبة وحدات في اللغات، ديفلوبمون بيرسونيل. هذا لم يكن موجودا هذه سنتين قبل، ولكن حاليا نحن في إطار تنزيل هذا البروجي. ثانيا ضرورة دعم المبادرات الشبابية وتشجيع ريادة الأعمال، توفير التمويل والتوجيه اللازم ومساعدة الشباب على خلق فرص العمل الحر. وأخيرا وجب علينا أن نركز على الاستثمارات في المجالات الواعدة مثل التكنولوجيا، الطاقة المتجددة، الاقتصاد الأخضر، لخلق فرص عمل مستدامة وتحقيق النمو الاقتصادي الشامل. شكرا وعلى تتبعكم وأشكركم.
Laila, and only on that last note you made about the importance of artificial intelligence. So I cannot listen to this presentation and not comment, not make a comment about the future of work, right? And this is what we say nowadays when we sit on a round table with policymakers talking about creating jobs. It's important, of course, to create jobs, especially for our, educated youth and university graduates. Now, which jobs, right? Because many of those jobs that we know nowadays will disappear, and many will be new jobs that require new skills. And that's why I can't agree more with what you just said about preparing our youth and our graduates with the needed skills for those new jobs. So thank you so much for your presentation. Any comments or questions? لا ما فيش. Okay.
ثانك يو دكتور. أنا بس سؤالي عن الاقتصاد غير الرسمي أو غير النظامي في المغرب، هل موجود أصلا؟ وهل في أي سياسات للحكومة علشان يعني يتم إنه الشباب تبقى بتشتغل في حاجات زي كده، خصوصا بعد الانتجريشن بتاع AI وتكنولوجي، فمثلا بلاتفورم ورك لو مثلا applications زي اوبر زي يعني هل الدولة في أي طريقة بتتبعها الحكومة في المغرب علشان ت... خلاص
طيب بصي، هو احنا من حظنا ان احنا كنا لسه في المغرب ولسه جايين بلد جميله جميله فعلا واستمتعنا بيها. وكان في كذا بيبر بريزنتد عن الليبر بارتيسيبيشن خصوصا في الفيميل، وده كانت مشكله في المغرب. لكن احنا سمعنا ان عندكم اكبر مشكله هي البرين درين اكتر. فهل انا لو عملت، وخاصه ان انتوا البرين درين نزيف العقول، انتوا بتسافروا اكتر، بتسافروا اكتر الى اوروبا، لا تتجهوا الى الخليج ولا الدول الثانيه. لكن كل الانيشيتيف ديت، هل انا بحطها في اعتباري وانا بعمل سياسه تعليميه ان احتفظ بهذه العماله؟ يعني بعد ما اديله الكورسز وزي ما شفت الثلاثه الموجودين، كيف يمكن الاحتفاظ بهذا الشخص داخل البلد، ما يحصلوش انه هو بعد ما ياخد كل الكورسز دي زيه زي الاخرين يبتدي يغادر المغرب؟ اوكي، شكرا.
Important point.
كأي مجال، في أي مجال il faut motiver motivation للشباب نحمس الشباب على أنهم يخدموا في البلاد ديالهم لأنها هي محتاجة لهم و وطبعا بالنسبة للتكوينات، احنا حاليا كنحاولوا نوفروا تكوينات اللي فيها ديفلوبمون بيرسونيل، يكون فيها لغات اكثر، و افيك لي زانفستيسمون اللي كاينين في المغرب حاليا، والرؤيه ديال 2030 اكزاكتومون. ما كنظنش بان الشباب غادي يبغي يمشي، بالعكس، لان مشاريع كبيره اللي كاينه عندنا في المغرب. دونك حاليا كنظن بان المغرب وجهه لكاع الطاقات الشابه الواعده اللي بغات ديفلوبي لا كارير ديالها. شكرا. بالنسبه ما عنديش فكرة كافية عن الموضوع باش نجاوبك، ولكن اليوم مجموعة من الشباب اللي كيخدموا في فيا انترنت، ودي زيتوديون اللي دياولي، الطلبه ديالي اللي كيساعدوا نفسهم دابا بالانترنت. كلشي ولا ساهل، كيخدموا كوميرس، ماركتينغ. كاع الشباب دابا كيتجهوا لهذا الدومين افيك الديفلوبمون تكنولوجيك. شكرا.
Thank you to all the presenters, and thank you all for your patience and for staying till now. We really appreciate it. So now I'm going to give you the certificates and we're going to take the picture. And please, all of you, join us in the picture because you stayed till the end, so you deserve to be in the picture.